Good evening and welcome to Inspiring Each Other. I'm Dr. Phil Worth, and tonight I'm here with Pete Mitchell. Tonight's a little bit of a different episode in that I needed some inspiration, and I wanted to reach out to Pete to help inspire me with some things. I first met Pete when he was the owner and bartender at the Rum Runner in Geneva, and I was a college student at Hobart. I went in with my friend Rhett's ID, and Pete took it from me, and I was a very confident young man, and I looked Pete in the eye, I said, "Pete, this is me." And he said, "No, Phil, it's not you. Please get out of here." And I left, and I came back the next morning because I am an uber confident individual back then. I said, "Excuse me, could I please get my ID back?" And Pete said, "Absolutely not, Phil. Get out of here. It's not your ID, but I will give the ID back to your friend Rhett so that he doesn't lose it." And at the time, he was a wonderful bar owner. He's had several restaurants since. And this week, I had a down moment where I needed some financial inspiration. So I reached out to Pete to give me some inspiration and guidance. Pete, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Phil. It's nice to be here.
What do you remember about my story at the bar? Was I one of 9 million college kids back then?
Oh, you were. So I had this thing I would do in the newspaper where in my ads when I had a band playing in the bottom corner would say, "Spot a minor, point him out, get a free drink." So it was kind of a crowdsourcing way of getting rid of the underage kids. It worked well.
I love it. Tell me about your beginning. What was the Rum Runner your first spot, your first bar? Was there one before that? That was where I met you in, I don't know, 93-ish.
Oh, it was, wow, that's right. I keep forgetting you're young. Yeah. So I had a series of jobs after high school, all of them evening jobs. I worked second shift at Sylvania. I worked, as the maintenance guy, cleaning floors at Kmart, and I kept getting fired because I'm not an employable human being. So I was broke, and it was 1979. And I'm standing at Slattery's Old Seneca Ale House, and I'm lamenting my lack of funds. And the bartender, Jake, who was my roommate, said, "Well, tomorrow, Pete, we're going to be short a bartender. You want to come in and tend bar?" And I said, I don't know 10 bar, Jake." And he looked at me and he said, "What do you think's in a rum and coke?" And I said, "Rum and coke." He said, "You're hired." And that Saturday, I walked behind the bar at 7 o'clock at night, and I turned around and looked, and there were all these people that wanted to talk to me because, of course, I'm the guy with the alcohol.
Yeah.
And I thought, hey, this is cool. So I went. So that was my first night where I actually messed up. If you could think of an order to mess up, I would mess it up. Somebody would ask for a Miller Lite, I'd give them a Miller. Somebody wanted, a rum and coke. I actually could get that wrong too, and it would be like, ginger, whatever. But I love the experience so much, and the frenetic pace of it all. It's intense. And after about 6 months, I kept getting called back so often to work that I ended up just working there full time. And after working there for 6 years, the gentleman that owned the place, Bob Slattery, wanted to move on, and he didn't want to move on with me or anybody else for that matter. And I thought, well, I'm going to either be unemployed or self-employed. Make your mind up. So I went to the bank and said, I need $13,000 to buy all this, the bar, the back bar, the ice machine. And it was a rental property. Bob didn't own it. I talked with the landlord. He said, "I'll rent to you." And on December 13th, which was a Friday, 1985, out my front doors of the Rum Runner.
Oh my gosh.
My rent was $300 a month.
That's fantastic. So when you made that sound like it was either be self-employed or unemployed,
Right.
how long did it take you to work that out in your mind, and how old are you at that point in your life?
So I was 27, and I really loved tending bar. I mean, it was to the point where it wasn't even work to me anymore. I would be working 50, 60 hours a week. I didn't care. And I knew Bob was going to be selling. So I picked up a second job on the 20 hours I wasn't working a week, and I tended bar at the Belhurst Castle to make enough money to help myself with a down payment. So I was working maybe 90, 100 hours a week. But again, it wasn't work to me. So, it, and I realized, Phil, this was one of those things that few people can say this. And I mean, very few. Uh, I was fortunate to find my passion. And I don't know what I would have done if Jake didn't say, hey, somebody's not going to be here tomorrow. I don't know. But there is nothing I would rather do than wait on people and talk to them while they're having a beverage or something to eat, or just listening to them while they, yap about their job or whatever. To me, it's the best job on earth.
Before we got started, you had said to me, geez, you're working here full time and you have a new practice that's going in North Carolina, and that's kind of what got us here tonight. And you're doing these podcasts, and wow, that's a lot of energy. I feel like I've never worked a day in my life. I genuinely love helping people. I genuinely love trying to figure out what's going on with people and make a difference in their lives. And for me, it's just fun. 9.5 days out of 10, right? We all have bad days with things.
Sure.
And what really brought us here, is I looked at my QuickBooks, and my numbers were so negative after 6 months that I was just terrified in one of these lonely moments. Talk about your journey from there, right? Because we went from Run Runner to a gazillion different restaurants, and you've grown. How do you pick the spot? How do you get started? How do you deal with the stress of the slow build of it all before you get clientele?
So the one thing about owning the Rum Runner, which was a college bar, is that when you're 30 years old and own a college bar, it's an amazing amount of fun, and it stays that way for a pretty long period of time. But as you get older, your customers don't. They graduate, and then a new crop of people come in. And when you hit your mid to late 30s, being called dude all day long, it just gets a little bit old. And I thought the wave of the future is going to be food and booze, not just drinks. I mean, the days of old guys sitting at bars and drinking little glasses of beer are, they're long gone. So the building next to me was empty and came up for sale. And I approached the guy that owned it and said, hey, I have this idea for a restaurant. And everybody thought I was absolutely, completely nuts. Why in the world would anybody want to put a restaurant on Seneca Street in Geneva, New York? I got pushback from a lot of my friends. They said, well, Pete, if somebody thought it was a good idea, they would have done it by now. And that was true. That's how a lot of people view stuff. But I also realized that even though I'm a little different and I'm a little quirky, there's a lot of different quirky people out there. You just don't know them that well. So Ann and I would have to leave Geneva to go to Lloyd's in Penn Yan or go to someplace in Rochester because they served food after what would be considered normal hours. 11 to 2 is lunch. From 2 to 5, there's no food. From 5 to 9 is dinner, and then that's it. There was no place to get a bite to eat at 10 o'clock at night on a Thursday in Geneva, New York, unless you wanted to take out pizza or take out Chinese food. That was it. I thought, all these other places in other towns, I mean cities, like Rochester or whatever. And in Penn Yan, I mentioned Lloyd's because he was someplace I like to go to. And I thought it couldn't just be me. So I bought the building, and I spent 2 years if I'd made $1,000 at the Rum Runner, I put $1,000 into this building. And it took me 22 months. This wonderful gentleman named Rick Morocco helped me. He was an everything guy, woodworker, plumber, electrician. He did it all. And
He passed.
He did.
Rick was a patient and just a barrel of laughs and a great guy, and I had so many wonderful down to earth conversations with him.
I knew him from childhood. His entire family, and actually I've got a great story about Rick too. So I opened up Parker's, and I was fortunate, very fortunate, to have Jessica Morrow, Christine Ainsley, Carrie Ann D'Amico, Michelle Guerri, all of these wonderful, wonderful people that came to work for me who were as hardworking as you could imagine. And they thrived on a busy environment. And when they'd come to work on a Friday at 5 o'clock at night, they'd high-five each other and say, we're going to make some money. And they would tear up the restaurant. I mean, they'd they were wonderful, and they always smiled. They always laughed. The guys back in the kitchen, Josh Payne, Jimmer Payne, Eric Souza, Bill Chambers, Ryan Bose, those guys, they would have a race between the front of the house and the back of the house to see who could get the food up first. It was absolutely wild. Unfortunately, I didn't really know what I was doing other than I knew how to wait on people. Inventory, loss control. So at the end of a year of working a 100-hour week, I'd lost a ton of money. And I thought, wait a minute, this isn't working right. But I learned, to fine tune things. And by the time my second year had rolled around, and don't forget, we're talking about my second year was 1998. The place was turning a substantial profit to the point where my sales reps couldn't believe how much food I was selling out of a restaurant that had 54 seats. So it turned out I was right, and there are people that don't want to eat from 11 to 2 and from 5 to 9.
When you have, for me, and I'll refer to this as kind of my Chicken Little moment. So when you're in that time in 96 or 97, as you're tired and you're going next door to work on the place with Morocco, and it just doesn't seem, how do you keep the positivity to go, this is going to go, I got to go, when you're losing money and you go, okay, I just got to adjust a little. Where do you find that drive?
I didn't know any better.
Okay.
No.
So it was pure stupid drive.
Well, no. Well, some people think, okay, Pete, you must have, did you go to school for business? Did you read a book? No. What'd you do? I realized I had no other options. Once your options are removed, you have to get the job done. And if it means, I remember I was actually on the schedule, even though I was the owner, because Michelle Guerri had to know who was going to work when and who was where. So it was a small schedule sheet because there weren't that many employees. And every Thursday it got put up and it would say, Pete, 10 to close, 10 to close, 10 to close. And of course, 10 a.m. and closing was 1 o'clock in the morning, which meant you got done at 2. So it was a 17-hour day, every day, 7 days a week. Not just for me, for everybody. I remember the kitchen manager, Josh, he'd work 90, 100 hours a week for months on end. And again, I was fortunate that these people were around me that they understood what I was thinking about how a restaurant should be, and what we were offering was unique to Geneva, and that this was going to work. They were going to make this work with me. And yeah.
In my world here, is a medical director in Seneca Falls, we talk about A players, B players, C players, D players that are within your staff.
Yeah.
And we spend a lot of work and time trying to get someone from a D to a B or a B to an A. For you, it sounds like you had a lot of great high energy employees. Was that dumb luck, or did you figure it out before? How did you get that team, right out of the gate?
Well, to wait on people is a lot different than a lot of other jobs. You can have not a very outgoing personality and perform a lot of jobs that are out there in the world. You don't have to be, hi, how are you folks? What can I get for you today?
Yeah.
You don't have to have that kind of mentality to do a lot of jobs.
Yeah.
So when someone would walk in the front door and apply for a job, you can tell within 5 seconds, how they present themselves. Did they stick their hand out and shake it? Did they say, hi, this is my name, and smile? Were they neat? Were they on time? Were they courteous? Were they fun? Because you can make somebody the best food in the world and give it to them with mediocre service, and it's a mediocre meal. You can give somebody an average meal with phenomenal service, they're going to walk away with a smile and come back over and over and over again. You betcha.
Did it take you a while to learn that? Was that months and months or years and years, that concept there?
So
where does that come from, and when do you start to believe that as a restaurant owner?
The restaurant owners in Geneva at that time, great bunch of guys. I knew them all because I would go out when I wasn't working. I would go to meals. I'd go to Pronti's. I'd go to the Deluxe. And all of them would come in my place, wish me well, and then talk to me, about little things that they notice about life. And one was from Dave Perry, who owned Pronnies. He said, Pete, if you make one person happy and they tell a friend you're lucky, you make one person unhappy, they'll tell everybody. And that stuck with me. And I would have meetings and say, you have no idea that person over at table 5, what they're thinking. They have a clock in their head, and you don't know what that clock's saying. It could say, if somebody doesn't talk to me in 30 seconds, I'm all of a sudden having a bad time. So you have to imagine that every person has a clock with a really short fuse on it. And when they sit down, I don't care if you're walking by with 14 trays of food and somebody's talking to your ear, you turn and say, hi, how are you? I'll be right with you. And touch the table. I'll be right back. You bet. Yeah, that's important stuff.
Did you create that a little bit, or
Yes.
I thought so.
Okay.
Was that something that Dave threw at you, or from Dave's lesson you just sort of gained that insight?
I knew all of his employees at Pronti's, of course, and they were friendly. But it was one of those things where you kind of notice that, of course, how do you like to be treated? And I am incredibly ADHD. So when I walk into a restaurant, if somebody doesn't say hi to me within 5 seconds, Ann will turn and look at me and say, it's going to be a bad day, isn't it? And I'll say, the bartender even looked at me and didn't say anything. What the hell's going on here, Say hi. Just say hi.
Yeah.
It takes no energy and no time.
Yeah. And it is a customer at a lot of your places, right? It makes you feel valued. What we talk about in our medical world is, how do you make the employee feel valued?
Mm-hmm.
How do you make the customer feel valued? And it sounds like it's really about making that customer feel valued, even if it takes me 2 minutes to get back to you.
Yeah. In the beginning, because I wanted people that came to work for me to have an understanding of me and my expectations, I said, you can tell a customer anything except no. I don't care what they want. If they want a burger and a milkshake, give them a burger and a milkshake. I don't care if it's not on the menu. Do it. I had one of my servers say, Pete, give me $5. I said, it's Saturday. I'm sorry, what? I got to go to Burn Dairy and buy this guy a pack of cigarettes. And she went to Burn, which was right up the street.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And she naturally, he paid for the cigarettes. Yeah. But she said, yeah, we do anything here. He said, give me a pack of cigarettes. And she went and got him a pack of cigarettes.
I love it.
And I thought, he's going to tell people that story.
And it really makes a difference.
It does. Completely.
Did you have a group, as this goes, and do you get this group of loyal people that just keep coming back and coming back, that make it more fun because they feel like a bigger family at that first Parker's?
They feel like it's their place.
Yeah.
They walk in and they tell people about it and they say, well, this is where I go. And the reason they go there is because naturally we did our best to make them feel special. And when they walk in the front door, hey, Bill, how are you? Oh my God, this is your friend from California you talked about? And everybody is a rock star. Every customer is a rock star to me. And by the way, I had a lot of employees that are this way. Julie Adams was famous for this. She said, this guy that just walked in, and he's over at table 6, he's not in a good mood. She goes, before he leaves here, I'm going to get him to smile. And it was a challenge. And these are the kind of folks that made my world.
Yeah.
You know Carol.
I do know Carol.
Yep, Carol Hendrickson. She came to work for me in Parker's in Geneva just to learn the ropes. And when I opened up the Auburn restaurant, she moved up there. That was her restaurant. And she tore Auburn up. Parker's up in Auburn. It took a couple years because, people didn't know us. But she was the face of that place, and she made it work. And that little restaurant, that turned out some numbers too.
So tell me about that transition. We got the bar and that's going, and then we got the restaurant.
Sure.
And somewhere you're like, maybe I need restaurant number 2. Tell me about that process in your mind.
So this is a great story. So it's November of '98, and Ann said, hey, Pete, and she's looking at the newspaper, which people still read back then. There's a sale at the Lowe's in Auburn. There wasn't a Lowe's in Geneva yet. She said, we need a storm door. I'm like, all right. So I take off, and it's 3 o'clock on a Saturday afternoon in the middle of November, and I'm hungry, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, So I'm driving up and down, and I didn't see a neon sign anywhere. And I thought, Auburn's like 3 times the size of Geneva. There's got to be a dozen places to go. I went up and down Genesee Street, nothing. So I saw a for sale sign on this building, and it said Jim Driscoll, Sherlock Holmes Real Estate. So I called the number. 5 minutes later, he was there and said, "Hi, you want to buy this building?" I said, "No, not really." I said, "But 2 doors over, there's a vacant building too. And it looks like Parker's in Geneva. You know, the display cases on the side and the door in the middle and 3 stories." And he said, "Well, it's not for sale." He goes, "But I know the owner and she's going through a divorce." I said, "Call her." In 5 minutes, she came down and we walked to the building. And I said, "I'm sorry you're getting divorced." And she said, "Well, we're selling all our assets." I said, "What do you want for this place?" And she looked at me and I looked at her. And we shook hands on a price. And I went home. And Ann said, "Where's the storm?"
Oh my
No,
God.
no, seriously. No, so, and then Ann says, "Where's the storm door?" I'm like, "Oh, crap."
Oh,
I said,
no.
"I bought something else." She goes, "What?" I said, "I bought a building in Auburn."
Oh my God.
She said, "What?" I said, "Yeah, I'm going to open a Parker's." She goes, "What do you know about Auburn?" I said, "I know that there's people like me that want to have food after 9 o'clock at night and after 2 o'clock in the afternoon."
It
It worked, Phil. It just worked.
but that's what you stuck to, right? So
Yes.
so your underlying mission statement was, I know there's people that want to have a later dinner and enjoy themselves after a drink, and if I provide that service, people will come. And if I provide that service with a smile and I do it relatively quickly, more people are going to come.
Oh, yeah.
So how long does it take Parker's Auburn to, tread water, so to speak?
So it made money instantly. Not lots, but we could keep the lights on and make the payroll. Saturdays and Sundays were tough because people that went out to watch football or college football, they had their places they went to already.
Yeah.
So I had to figure out, well, actually, Carol had to figure it out, how to get these people in. And we did everything: food specials, drink specials on Saturday afternoons. She'd bring in music, and little by little, it worked. It took a while.
Little by little a year, little by little 2 years. What's the time frame of that?
So I would say at the end of the second year, the place was making solid numbers. Don't forget, we already knew the formula.
Yeah.
So and we already had the employee training down. We already knew what to talk about at meetings, who to hire, what to show them, what we were all about, and that made it a much quicker transition. And that was, so I opened that restaurant in January 16th of 2000. And then in May of 2002, my Cisco food rep, who lives in Newark, said, "Pete, there's no place to eat in Newark after 9 o'clock at night." I drove up there. I picked up Rob. We drove around town. I saw this building with a for sale sign on it. Gail Vanderbrook was her name. I called her. 5 minutes later, she came down. She said, "Would you like to see this building?" I said, "No, but there's a building across the street."
No way.
No, I'm serious. That's vacant, and it had a bigger display side, with the door in the middle. And I said, "Do you happen to know the owner?" And she said, "Yeah, he's getting divorced."
No way.
And no, seriously. And I said, "Okay, can I walk inside?" So she called him, and he came down. We walked through the building. I said, "What do you want for it?" And he looked at me, and I looked at him, and a couple minutes later, we shook hands, and I drove home and said, "Guess what, honey?"
No
She goes,
way.
"No." And I said, "Yeah." This time, the restaurant was open in 6 months.
Because you were better?
Yes.
Because you had more money? Because you had a
Both.
team?
Both. So I knew how to design, which is very important. Instead of saying, "Well, this is going to go here," and then, "Oh crap, that won't work," and then move it, I sat down on the floor with a piece of graph paper and a pencil, and I drew a restaurant and gave it to my contractor and said, "Build this." And by the way, it was still me and Rick Morocco doing the woodworking, and Richie Santelli, who's an absolutely incredible contractor, and Mark Johnson. And we knocked the place out. I opened October 22nd of 2002, and again, right out of the gate, it did well. But it did take people time in Newark to understand that. Can I order some food to go? It's 10 o'clock at night. Yeah, come on in. We're here.
It was there ever a point in that where you were like scared? This isn't going to go. What am I
Of course I
doing?
was. I was the number of times I would lay awake at 4 o'clock in the morning and stare at the ceiling and and question every move I made, conversations I had with customers, employees, vendors, uh, the idea that maybe I should have just stuck with one. Yeah, sure. That ran through my mind a lot. I still have doubts. I mean, listen, if you're self-employed and you don't feel like your toes are hanging over the edge, you're not really self-employed. You have to have a whole lot of self-doubt. Otherwise, you're not going to make it as a self-employed person.
And as a as I started here in medicine, and really started on my own underneath the hospital, right? And I had a lot of string to develop and
Mhm.
potentially hang myself with. But the hospital is wonderfully supportive of me. And I never had this fear when I started that it wasn't going to work because I know what I'm doing and the
Mhm.
hospital's got my back. Um, the fear that I have now in North Carolina is I'm opening the doors and I'm making all the decisions. There's a different level of self doubt and fear that I've never had in my life, and I'm pushing on people's chests at times to save their life, right? I trained for that. I know how to do that.
Mhm.
This, no matter how you do it, you're kind of this first time you're flying by the seat of your pants. It's scary at moments.
It's for me. It's still scary. I'll think, I've sold several restaurants, and I question, should I have sold them now? Should I have waited a couple of years? Because when I was 55 and started planning for my retirement, I thought that by the time I was 68 years old, which I am now, that would be I would be different. I would be so much more different than I was at 55.
Mhm.
It turns out I'm not. I'm just slower. But my desire to be a good operator and the thrill that I get when I walk in a restaurant, it's still there. It doesn't make a difference if it's my restaurant or someone else's. My head's on a swivel. I'm noticing stuff. If the salt and pepper shakers are half empty, I'm wondering why. And my desire to be in this business has not waned at all. I just can't work 17 hours a day. I couldn't work a 12-hour day 2 days in a row. My legs would just like not handle it.
To let's finish that journey, right? Because there's still more. We've got one Parker, two Parker, three Parkers in Newark, right?
Yes.
And then keep telling that story. Where do we go from there?
So uh, the building next door to Parker's in Geneva used to be called Snuff and Stuff. It was a head shop. It was very small. It was like 10 feet wide. And the owner wanted to get out. I said, do you mind if I buy your little building? He said, no. So I bought it. And I built a kitchen inside of that because my kitchen was too small. And I thought, well, I'll build the kitchen here. And then Sonny, who owned Sonny's next door, wanted to retire. And I said, can I buy your building too? He said, yeah, what do you want to do in here? I said, I would like to try something different. I would like to try a little more high end, but with like a wood fired oven, a nice wine list, someplace more adult. So I bought it and spent 6 more months remodeling it, 7 months, and opened the front doors. I made a whole lot of mistakes because this wasn't Parker's. High-end dining is a whole different ball of wax, and my learning curve was very long and very steep. I lost a lot of money, but eventually we worked out the kinks, and we figured out, okay, this is a better way to attract customers, and this is a better format if we do this instead of this. Don't be too expensive, but be nice enough inside where a family could go and have like a nice celebratory meal, or someone that wants to sit at the bar and have a nice steak and a good glass of wine. I mean, by the way, a customer is a customer.
Yeah.
I mean, if the guy wants a burger, I don't care. But there was no place like that in Geneva. So I opened that up, and after a while, it became well known. And when a building in Seneca Falls became available, uh, I talked to Carol and said, I will only buy this building if you run it. And she said, okay. She said, I can train a manager to run the Auburn location. So I ended up buying 2 buildings in Seneca Falls side by side, blew a hole in them. Spent 6, 7 months building a Parker's there, and that place is a monster. That place, and Carol has a lot to do with this. I mean, first of all, she's a workhorse. I mean, that girl, I don't even know when she sleeps.
And it sounds like she's been a great wingman from really
Oh my
early
God,
on
Carol!
to help grow this.
Believe me, if I could have 2 Carols, I could run the world. I mean, I'm not kidding you. So when that place took off, which was almost instantaneous, I thought, okay, this is enough. I'm going to sit back and let the managers run the places, and
And you're how old at this point?
So I opened up Parker's in Seneca Falls, January of 2011, January 16th. So 14 years ago, so I was 54. And I've been thinking about retiring. And then I got bored, Phil. I got so effing bored because the places are running on autopilot. I drive around, say hi. They say, "What are you doing here?" I thought, well, I walk by in the bar, get a Diet Pepsi. I talk to a customer. They want to know who I am, because the managers are the face of the place, which is how I planned it.
But you feel a little lost, right? Because that was you.
I did feel
And
lost.
you've shared your joy with people, and
I
they've
did.
made it grow. And then all of a sudden, you're sitting back going, "Now what the hell do I do?"
Completely. And I didn't want to be the kind of owner that, how can I put this? People that think it's important for people to know you're the owner, I've never understood that. I could care less if anybody knows who I am. I'll walk in Auburn, sit down, no one knows who I am. Half the employees don't know who I am. What do I care, But there was nothing for me to do because they didn't need me. And if I did do some work, I'm displacing somebody whose job it is to work. If I said, something, I'm going to work a Friday night shift here. Well, the person that would have made $400 that night wouldn't be working because I'm there. And I thought, that's stupid. Why would you do that? So I started playing in my garden and, built a pergola and, put a paver deck patio in. And I thought, Pete, this can't be your life. So the building next door came available where Henry B's used to be.
Yeah.
And I miss Henry B's, by the way.
It was great.
You know something? The people there were wonderful. I enjoyed the food, and I love the ambiance.
So, some of it is where, sort of sidetracking a little bit. One of my favorite Henry B's, and I've had a lot of memories there.
Mm.
But my daughter Ella was about 3 when, or 4-ish, as Henry B sort of started to slip away.
Mm.
And we would sit in the 2-top in the front window and order a gnocchi trio. Just her and I, 3 different kind of gnocchis, and she would pick at them and I would pick at them, and we would smile and laugh, and it was just, to me, life is about moments.
Yes.
The more moments you can create for whoever you are surrounded by, the better off it's going to be. And that was one of my really cherished moments when I did that with Ella, and what a great spot.
And it was. And the memories I had of that place gave me an affection for the building. Because buildings have personalities, just like people. And so I walked through it and I thought, what would I do with this place? And so I bought it and remodeled it and opened it up as 84 Fall. And I mean, the place is stunningly beautiful inside. I liked it. It was a small tapas restaurant. It was fun. I really enjoyed it. It didn't hold a candle business-wise to Parker's next door, just because, Parker's really hit Seneca Falls right in the breadbasket, 84 Fall was more of a, people, how can I put it? It was a little different clientele that would go in there, and they didn't go in there that often. So the place treaded water, but it was a fun place to have, and I enjoyed it. And then I got a call from the economic development director of Penn Yan, and he said, "We'd like to have a Parker's down here." And I said, "Okay." I drove down, walked around, looked at buildings, and I said, "What do you want to do for me?" He said, "Well, we'll give you some incentives." And I said, "Okay, great." So I found a building, did the remodel job again. This is an endless process, and opened it. Have you been there, by the way? The one in Penn
I've
Yan?
never been to the one in Penn Yan.
Gorgeous. absolutely gorgeous. Instead of the bifold open doors like I have in Geneva,
Yeah.
to the bifold open windows, but they stretch across the width of the building.
Hmm.
Wood-fired pizza oven right in the middle of the floor. Open kitchen. It's a great place. Andy, the manager, she started with me 25 years ago. So all these people that have been in management positions, I've known forever. Sean, he runs the restaurant in Newark. He started with me in December of '97. Oh, sorry, December of '96. So 29 years.
Yeah.
And you can't buy that kind of experience. It just it's tough.
But it also shows um, some of your qualities in that you must be taking good care of these people because they continue to support you. They must feel valued by you as the owner because they continue to help you and help things grow and do it both for themselves but also for the cause. They believe in your cause.
Well, first of all, they have a great deal of ownership in the place. It's not like I'm one of these micromanaging bosses. I've never understood that. If you didn't, if the person you hired couldn't do the job well in the first place, you shouldn't have hired him. I mean, you can train people, but there's got to be that inner core that exists. Because if it doesn't, it doesn't work well. I don't care how much time in grade they have. They're never going to get it. And Sean and Carol and Julie and Andy and all these people, Mary Jo, they get it. And I've been so fortunate to have people like that in my life. It could not have been done otherwise. There's no way on earth what I did could have ever happened if it wasn't for the people at the and by the way at the time.
Yeah.
The timing was
The timing
perfect
of the
with these people. Yeah.
For me, one of the things that I struggle with more in my role here is um, sort of administrative type role. When do you let somebody go, right? When are you with somebody? And when I first started, it was a little bit easier. As the hospital and the system has grown and gotten bigger, there is 4,000 HR loops that you have to jump through before someone can be let go. What is your experience with the letting go of people? Was it once a week? How long
Oh
does it
no.
take you to build that team? And is there a lot of turnover? Not a lot of turnover?
In
Tell
the
me about
restaurant
that part.
in the restaurant business in general, there's a phenomenal amount of turnover. I was fortunate that the people that entered my world ended up being long timers. Uh, I was thinking, was it 2 years ago? I was having a conversation with a chef about business. Now, he didn't work for me, but we were just having a business talk. And I mentioned that, oh, yeah, this person's been with me for 20 years. He said, wow, that's a long time. I said, oh, I've got dozens of people that have been with me for 5, 10, 15, 20 years. Oh, yeah. He said, that's rare. I said, it is rare, and it's rare on both sides of the fence. I mean, it's not like it's all me. I mean, I never want to give anybody the impression that, I have something special. I, I can see things in people and relate to them in a way that leads me to believe that this is going to work out, and it usually just does. Sometimes it doesn't, but most times it works out well. And also, though, they have the same passion I do. I can't tell you the number of times I would call up a manager, pick one. By the way, I'm always going to use Carol because she's right next door. But it would be 8 o'clock in the morning, and she's already been working for an hour doing the special sheets, and fielding phone calls. I'll talk to Sean up in Newark, and I'll say, "How was last night?" He said, "I had to work the fryers last night because the fry guy called in sick." So here's a guy who's the manager, and he jumps in the kitchen and goes to work right away because he has to. Andy in Penn Yan. She said she had to make salads the other night because we were short staffed. I mean, these are the kind of people that I've been fortunate up to have in my world. Very fortunate. You don't find them anywhere.
Well, and some of it is you also have to make them feel valued and supportive, or else they would go do things. So they would find a different restaurant to go work for. I
Oh,
think
sure.
that's the complicated part, and I think that's
Oh,
where
yeah.
oftentimes we get it wrong.
Oh, believe me, for someone to say, what is the most important thing you think about that has given you your success? I'd say it's the people I've been around. There's just no question about it. It's the number one thing I can think of that has helped me on my way.
As you think about, a mistake, as you look back over a lot of these restaurants, what's one of the big mistakes you went, geez, I wish I never would have done that?
Thinking I knew what I was doing.
Yeah.
Well, the problem is when you become, mildly successful, you can get wrapped up in your attitude and think, well, if I can do this, then I can do this. Yeah, it doesn't work that way all the time.
Yeah.
And sometimes it brings you up short how wrong you were. And of course, it ends up costing you a lot of money.
Yeah.
So I've lost a good fortune before. Again, it's all part of the game of business.
Does that freak you out to ever get started again? Or you go, I'll just figure it out and I'll do the next thing?
Well, it depends how many zeros are after that mistake. Some of those mistakes I've made had there were a lot of zeros there.
Yeah.
It made me a little more, how can I put it? I would look at something first before doing it. After a while, I learned, okay, think for a second, Pete. And I'm not great at that. My patience level's about zero. I will jump first, think about it later. So now I jump a little bit later, not much though. I make fewer mistakes as I've gotten older, but I still make them.
Yeah.
Of course I do. Jesus, and I'll probably continue to make them.
So talk about retirement a little bit, right? Because we've grown this restaurant business and you've sold most of them now, right? What do you have left? What have you let go of at this point, if you're comfortable talking about
Yeah,
that?
sure. So I sold the Seneca Falls restaurant to Carol's son, Jimmy. He's been with me for over 20 years. And he understands a lot about what I'm about and what Carol was about. Actually, I'm gonna say Carol because those two have been worked together for a very long period of time. But again, we all are simpatico on what the customer experience should be. I can't tell you the number of times I've sat and had lunch with Carol at the end of the bar at Parker's by the wait stand, and the host or hostess will be seating somebody, and their front door will be open. Carol's doing this, and doesn't see the host, noticing them, and she gets up and walks over. And I've been in restaurants where the owner will wait for an employee to do something, and yeah, no, that's the sign of someone that, well, they might be good, but they're not that good. So anyway, back to the retirement thing. So I sold Parker's in Seneca Falls, knowing it would be in good hands, because as I told Jimmy, in 15 years, I'm going to want to be able to walk in the front door here and get some food and a drink. And I have no doubt that with you as the owner, that'll happen. And Michaela, who was my manager up in Auburn, we had the same deal. I knew she was good. First of all, she was good because Carol said she was good. So I sold that business to Michaela. And then it came time to sell Geneva. And the guy that owns Eddie O'Brien's right next door approached me and said, hey, I know you want to retire. How about I buy these two from you? And I said, yeah, sure, Ronnie. What for? He said, I still love the business so much. I still want to, give it my all. Now, he's a lot younger than me. I think he's your age. So, if I was 50, I wouldn't have sold anything. I'd have 10 restaurants by now if I was 50. So I have two. I have Newark and Penn Yan, and it's plenty. It's fun. If I want to be in the business, I pop into one of the places. And if I don't, I work in my garden.
What's next?
Ann and I have been living in Florida now 6 months a year. She's now a Florida resident. It's nice. I would love to consult. I thought about hanging a shingle out because, if there's a mistake to be made, I've already made it. Learn from my experience. I could tell a new restaurant owner so many things to not do because I did them, and I can tell them how much each mistake I made cost. So if you spend 2 hours with me, you could save yourself $100,000, no problem. No problem.
Yeah. I love it. Any parallels from the lessons that you may have learned with people in the restaurant business that you would apply to all of life as you go through?
You know, I've discovered that if you take disappointment to heart too seriously, it's going to be a long life, man. A lot of people don't have your view of loyalty, have your view of honesty, and have your view of, I don't know, being polite, decorum, being social, whatever. And they're all over the place. And sometimes by mistake they end up working for you. And you have to not take it personally.
Hmm.
And because if you do, you're not going to sleep well at night. And it took me years, I mean years and years and years, to realize that whatever this person did that may have caused, I don't know if damage is the right word for it, but caused a whole bunch of grief in my business world, like two line cooks that went out the night before and got bombed and were too hungover to come to work, and we had to close the restaurant for lunch that day in summertime. That's happened to me before. That happened to me 2 weeks ago on a Sunday in Penn Yan. You can't take it personally. You can get mad at them, but you can't think they did it because they didn't like you, because you have to realize you're not important to everybody. And that's a lesson that's tough to learn.
I have a similar story that I share with a lot of people. One of my 96-year-old patients who's passed, probably 8 or 9 years ago. I used to take Wednesday afternoons off to golf with some of my friends, and this old guy was coming in, and I loved him. He was a great guy. I loved caring for him. And he walks in to see me, and he looks me right in the eye, and he says, "What in the hell are you doing here?" I said, "Well, I saw you were coming in. I skipped out on golf with my buddies." And he says, "When are you going to learn? You are not that goddamn important. The world does not revolve around you. And if you die tomorrow, it's going to go on like you never even existed. Please get out of here. Go have fun with your buddies. I like Sue Green better anyway, and she's going to take good care of me." And there was a lesson in that for me from a 96-year-old guy that I carried with me. But it's hard not to take things personally when you're in the middle of it. Really hard.
It is, and especially when you've done your best for them, and you think, well, this should be reciprocal. You can't think that way. And if you think that way, it's going to be a long night's sleep.
How
Or a
long
rough
did it
night's
take
sleep.
you? How long did it take you to learn that? Was that in business 1, business 6?
It was an evolving lesson. It became more and more solid as the years went by, and it took a long time. Though there were times I'd go home in complete frustration with some employees because they'd come in sick, or they'd call in sick. They'd come in late. They'd leave early. They didn't do their job right, and the majority of them did. By the way, I mean, like I said, I've been very fortunate, but some of them just would torture you, and I would just sit there and think, what is wrong with me? Why doesn't this person respect me? And of course, it had nothing to do with me. It's their life. I'm just this guy that issued a check once a week so they could pay their rent. There's no loyalty there,
Yeah.
none.
Well, you say that, but you've got a lot of people in a business that is really high in turnover that sound like they're pretty loyal to you.
No, they are. I'm talking about an individual person.
Yeah.
If you expect out of everybody, you're going to be disappointed.
Yeah.
I just was fortunate enough to get it from a lot of people.
Yeah.
But the expectations of loyalty have become a lot more realistic.
When I was a young man, I did sales in North Carolina. So my first job out of college was to sell surgical equipment, and my territory was from Pinehurst to the coast of North Carolina. And so I went operating room to operating room to operating room. And my boss at the time, the one thing he said to me that really stuck is, people buy from people. Be a good person. Treat people like you want to be treated, and treat them appropriately. And when you say you're going to do something, help them with that. And it will carry you through everything that you will do. And I feel like I took that little lesson and applied it to my medical practice as that started to grow. Is your world of restauranting and helping them, is it the same thing? You're just taking care of people because you enjoy doing it?
I do. I can't tell you the number of times I have been in. Julie will confirm that. You know Julie? Julie Adams?
I don't, not off the top of my head, I
She was
don't.
one of the early ones. She and I would sometimes go out for a bite to eat, and we'd go to a new restaurant and sit at the bar, and the front door would open, and no one would say hi, and Julie and I would look at each other, and you could tell we were almost going to say hi to that person. Someone will be right with you. Hang on, the bartender just walked out back. Someone will be right with you. Sometimes we have said it, by the way. It's just one of those things where it's an automatic, it's a reflex to want to make someone comfortable, especially in the environment when you expect it. It's not like you're walking into Walmart to buy, a blender. You're going out to be made to feel special. You want someone to recognize you as a customer and to spend the time to say, hi, how are you today? Oh my God, we have these great items on the menu today, and I got a special I know you'll like. And by the way, that's a nice coat you're wearing, or whatever.
Yeah.
You want to connect. You're not going to connect over buying a toaster. You're going to connect over a 2-hour meal with a nice bottle of wine and at a dessert and yada, yada, yada. And that's going to make that person want to come back again because, hey, I can go here and feel special.
So for me, as we're kind of wrapping up, right? I am this terrified young man. I'm still going to call myself young at 51. As
Me,
scary
are.
as that. Thanks, buddy. Thanks. I am really 6 months into my doors being open. And as the zeros stack onto things, there are moments when I would be terrified. What advice would you give me as a business owner? And then what advice would you give to someone in my shoes that happens to be opening a restaurant? What would the Pete Mitchell words of wisdom be?
Oh my God. I never underestimate how much giving your all means to the people that you're working with. If they see you do it and they see you keep a positive attitude, they're going to think it's everything okay. They are. I can't tell you the number of times I've walked back in the kitchen and one of the guys will say, hey, Pete, we need help. And I'll do it. I'll work fries. I'll do anything. And that's important because that gives people a sense that it's going to work. We're in the weeds. We're dying here. We've got a line of tickets to the window. But you know something? That guy that owns the place, he'll come back here and help. And if you're not making any money and you're not doing well, you got to keep that tight to yourself. Your employees cannot know how things are going for you. And sometimes just a belief in yourself that'll work ends up paying off in the long run. It really does. It might not seem like it, and it might not be tomorrow. It might not be quick enough. Some people say, well, it's not working. I've been doing this for 2 months. Like, 2 months? You haven't even started yet. What's wrong with you? I've lost money for years before.
I love it. Any other, parting gifts or parting words of wisdom or questions as we kind of wrap up?
I think being self-employed I think everybody should be self-employed at least once in their life for a time. The perspective it gives you on the world is oh so important. I completely agree.
It's been a fun journey for me. I'm hoping it's the beginning of a long journey, but I've really enjoyed the ups and downs, and it's a bit of a roller coaster. And I can't thank you enough for coming in tonight and sharing your wisdom with us. It's
Thanks,
been a
Phil.
pleasure.
Thank you. This has been absolutely wonderful. I've really enjoyed it. Thank you.
I love it.